Hey, Evolutionary.org podcast coming your way, episode 594. Today we're going to talk about a 2024 update, Halotestin Revisited. And Halotestin, look, it's one of those steroids that, a lot of people, they look at this stuff on paper and they're like, wow, this stuff is strong. So on paper it's insane when it comes to its androgenic and anabolic ratios. On paper, 20 times more anabolic than testosterone and 10 times more androgenic than straight testosterone. So that's crazy. In real life, do those ratios make any sense? No. Mobster and I have both used Halo before. Are you going to
Yep.
get 20 times the results or 10 times the results as testosterone?
No,
No, you're
no,
not. That's just
no,
not possible. If such a thing was possible, everybody would
no.
be just using Halo all the time.
Yeah,
But in
yeah, yeah.
reality, it's just not the way these things work. So it's one of those examples where a crazy chemist in a lab decided to come up with something that on paper had a certain ratio, but then when they put it to the test and people actually started trying it out and using it, that wasn't the case. So this is a perfect example of it. So halotestin, it's got an interesting history. It was first released in late 1950s by Upjohn, and the trade name for it was Halotestin. Ciba Pharma came in; they would release the hormone under the Altandrin name, and then Halotestin remained the most recognizable brand name. So, today, guys like Mobster and I, who've been around the block, we just call it Halo. And
Yeah.
people, if you go into the gym and you're talking steroids with people and you just mention Halo, people will know exactly what you're talking about if they have any experience. But if you say, "Oh, I'm using Altendrin," no one's gonna know what the hell you're talking about. So that's basically how it works when it comes to these steroids. So look, at the end of the day, medical purposes for Halo was the therapeutic benefits, and it was used obviously like other steroids that were first designed in the medical industry for muscle wasting mainly, androgen deficiencies in men, lean tissue repair, malnutrition, and healing bone fractures. Now, obviously, as a bodybuilder, we lift a lot of weights. We get our body scanned. A lot of times they'll say, "Wow, you have really good bone structures," but they won't say, you've got your tissues and your ligaments in good shape. So halotestin, one of the things they use it for, even though it was used for lean tissue repair, as a bodybuilder, it's just not going to happen. You can't take halotestin and repair tissues. If that was the case, they'd be giving pro athletes this. But if you're an old lady and you're suffering, or an old man and you're suffering from muscle wasting back in those days, they would give you these hormones because that was the state of the medical industry back then. They didn't have the drugs that they have today. They didn't have the nutritional knowledge that we have today to help older people with this stuff. So that's what would happen. So once they started developing the drugs that didn't come with crazy side effects, obviously drugs like Halo became obsolete and they were no longer given to people for these types of purposes. So now what we see, Halo is used in bodybuilding, especially in powerlifting. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let Momster in to talk a little bit more about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in the pre-show with Steve, I was talking about, and I've actually described this kind of thought process on the forums where when we've talked about trend, for example, Steve, you say, oh, trend does this, trend does that, trend does the other. But myself included, on the brief run that I've used trend as a part of a stack that I was doing, I felt toxic. And Halo is kind of like that. Does it work for what we're going to talk about today? Absolutely. Does it blow you the fuck up? No. Can you feel like shit on it? God, yes. This is kind of almost, to be perfectly honest, especially when it comes to powerlifting, you almost want that effect. You want that kind of, oh, I don't like how I feel, get under the bar and smash the granny out of your PRs and your PBs and records in competition. But in terms, it's not a feel good drug by any stretch of the imagination. So here's the thing, right? And we talk about all kinds of stories. And what Steve said about the on paper part is especially true. Most really potent steroids that have specific effects, and in this particular case, I'm going to say more the aggression and power than muscle tissue, have the greatest amount of side effects. They're the ones you want to run the least, the ones you want to run for the shortest periods of time. Halo is kind of like that. So, for example, and I'm thinking specifically of powerlifting. When I first became interested in the iron game in general, physical culture, weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, and so on and so forth, and then later on became aware of the steroid aspect of it, which was kind of more or less straight away, but only in a small way. And obviously, I've grown into that side of things in terms of the information and the history and so on and so forth. The reputation that Halo had in the powerlifting side of our sport and in the production of just out and out how much fucking weight you're going to lift was tied into, and you can find these videos from the late 70s and early 80s, Steve. You've got guys squatting and they are headbutting the bar. And the knurling is like giving them a nasty, some of them are getting nosebleeds and cuts on their forehead. And then they get under the bar and they're pulling it, and it's like 1,000 fucking pounds. And they're yanking this fucker backwards and forwards on the stands. And then they're locking it into position, taking those 2 steps back, IPF style, and going up and down with a grand on their back. And you're like, yeah, man, come on, that's the shit I want. I want that level of aggression. That, in my mind, Steve, especially for at least the strength side of the sport, is where Halo fucking shines. It's one of 2 drugs. The other one would be, his nickname is Check Drops. Don't ask me to pronounce the science name off the top of my head. 2 drugs that are going to get you that kind of, I want to kick some fucking ass in a controlled environment. You're not smashing the granny out of the spotters and kicking the judges in the throat. No, but you are aggressive where required underneath the bar. It's going to make you want to move more weight from A to B. It's going to make you want to yank that thing on the frame and get underneath. And Halo for me is that steroid, one of 2 steroids that do that. In terms of out and out muscle, forget it. Honestly, Steve, I think and I talk about this with other steroids. When you look at the medical reason that the 99% of steroids were created for, and that's what they were all created for, bar 1 or 2. They were created to treat medical conditions, and Halo for me is a drug that enables you to hold on to muscle tissue. So from the bodybuilding perspective, instead of, that's a little bit more aggression for the bodybuilder, but they'll be typically running other steroids as well, same as some of the powerlifters. Funny enough, ironically, the powerlifters were using the crazy dosages just to see what would happen, hence the nosebleeds and the headbutting and stuff. It's about, in a competition stack for me, from a bodybuilding perspective, holding on to my hard-gained, hard-earned muscle tissue while stripping away body fat. So it's not necessarily a steroid that's going to affect, I would say it's not at all really, certainly not in my experience, one that's going to put pounds of muscle on for me. But if I was on a cut and I was going to try a different aspect and I wanted to maintain the level of strength that I've got, which is mostly my thing, that's what I train for, then this would be a great drug in that particular regards. I think the only thing was for me, and it's again a personal experience, guys, we know how this works. And when we talk to the listeners, we are talking to the majority of listeners. So for the majority of you, holding on to the lean muscle tissue and increased aggression, I didn't get that. I didn't notice anything in terms of lean muscle tissue. So maybe I was holding on to tissue, just the scale didn't change. But I certainly also didn't notice for me the more aggression that I was expecting from halotestin. I have used Check Drops, and again, only on the day of a competition, Steve, and that definitely had an effect on my aggression. I've talked about a video that may exist somewhere on someone's phone of me running up and down like a fucking lunatic, effing and CUNT and everybody there for a minute or 2 after making a PB. I think I got a British record. I'm ready to kick some ass and then calm the fuck down because I realised I was being a bit of a dick. But that's precisely why I was using it. I wanted that edge. And I thought Halo was going to give me some of that flavour, and it didn't. But that was for me. I might be at that particular point in my life still at elite levels on certain things. I'm certainly, in terms of my age, Steve, a masters for the numbers that I'm lifting. I would win actual records as a 50-plus athlete. So I'm right up there. So maybe I was expecting to get an edge that I've already fucking got. Now, if you're on your way up, if you're still progressing to the point where I am in terms of my strength, you might get something out of this. So certainly in that particular, because like I say, with any steroid, and I talk about this on show, Steve, when I say do your own research to double check what we're saying. But 9 times out of 10, you should look at what the steroids are created for. I'm going to touch on what Steve said earlier on because I thought it was kind of important. If you are bedbound with a 3rd degree, 4th degree burn, whatever it is, Steve, if you've got some terrible medical condition that untreated, with you laying in bed, hospitalized, feeling goddamn poorly, Steve, the muscle falls off you so quick. Any of us that have been bedbound or had medical things can tell you how quickly muscle can fall away, how strength can fall away, and equally with muscle memory, how quickly we can gain it back. Now, we're talking about people with burns, cancer, breast cancer in the case of women, uh, uh, other drugs that was required, corticosteroids, cortisone, and other steroids and medication that's given to people to treat a medical condition. And some of these can have a terrible effect on your muscle tissue, especially when you're bedbound and you're feeling very frail. And in this case, halotestin was one of those drugs, as Steve, others came along which were better at doing the same job. And it was specifically designed to keep you as full, so to speak, as muscular as it possible. In other words, you weren't going to lose 15, 20 pounds in 2 or 3 weeks. You were going to try and keep some muscle tissue. And the reason for that is twofold. A, it speeds up your recovery after the medical condition has been treated. And B, it actually enables you to fight the medical condition that you're being treated for because you are maintaining some semblance with steroids, in this case, Halo, of health. So that's what it's about there, Steve. People don't
Mm-hmm.
understand, and you don't want to. I don't want any listeners of ours to have to go through that to find out the hard way. So it's super important to look at why it was created. And what you're looking at there when you think about it is that none of these people in bed, in hospital with these medical conditions are becoming more muscular and stronger. They are just trying to maintain some level of strength and muscle tissue that they had when they got there or before the medical condition. So Halo does that. But in terms of the toxic slash aggression, the way the toxicity can make you feel aggressive and make you want to kick ass, but specifically in the gym, Halo is for a lot of people, and especially powerlifters, an absolutely amazing steroid in that regard, Steve.
So let's talk about the structure a little bit. So that's going to kind of explain why they structured it this way. So first off, as you mentioned, Mobster, it is liver toxic. So it's got that added methyl group at the 17 carbon position. That allows you to take it orally and not have it
Yeah.
get destroyed. But it does also make it very toxic to the liver. So you want to make sure when you use this stuff, you're using your liver support supplements along with it. Another thing that it does, an added fluoride group at carbon 9 and 3, and a hydroxyl group at carbon 11. And this will modify it from the testosterone molecule because it is a testosterone derivative. Now, as a testosterone derivative, you would think, well, it probably aromatizes. In this case, it does not. Because of those modifications, they made it so it will not aromatize. So if you take Halo, you don't have to worry about using any type of anti-estrogen or any type of aromatase inhibitor. So that's that. It also, those structural changes are what increases its androgenic nature. So in that situation, as Mobster mentioned, you can expect strength and quick strength when you're on it if you react really good to it. So that's basically what they came up with. Another thing that you're going to notice on it is red blood cell count goes up very rapidly on it. So this is going to give you, when you're training, it's going to give you uh more power to your training, more ability to your training. Overall, though, because it does it when you're using this stuff at PED dosages, it can have a negative effect when it comes to your energy, when it comes to all this stuff. Basically, it's making your blood thicker by doing this very rapidly, especially when you're using it at PED dosages. So you really want to be careful and watch out for the side effects, these androgenic side effects like high blood pressure, insomnia, cholesterol levels being out of whack, all that stuff. You're going to get a big boost in hematocrit, hemoglobin levels. And so I recommend, if you're going to use Halo, just like any androgenic compound, really before any anabolic steroid, but especially with Halo and Tren and these types of very harsh steroids, that you donate blood. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, Steve, it doesn't really do that much of a difference if you donate blood," but it does make somewhat a difference, and it's also helping the people in your community. So this is a great reason why you should be donating blood before every cycle, and it's also going to help you take the edge off those red blood cell counts. So it's really smart to do that. Look, and I've gotten blood work done on cycle, from mild cycles to harsh cycles, and I can tell you there is definitely an effect on cholesterol when you're using these anabolic steroids. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that and get your edge off the red blood cell count. One more thing I want to mention, Mobster, before you bring you in, is the strong fat loss effects. And we've seen guys run Halo who've been powerlifters who are trying to make weight. Okay. And Halo is a great option because unlike some of these other oral steroids like Dynamo, for example, you're not going to get a big increase in body weight. So this is great for those who are powerlifters or trying to make weight. When I used to
Yeah.
compete, I used to have to make weight. I'd be 2, 3 pounds above where I needed to be for my contest. So I basically fast the day of my competition, weigh in, then I would get some quick carbs in my system. And that's how I would make weight. So Halo's a great option for those of you who have to make weight. It's not going to increase your estrogen effects. And there are some fat loss effects that it can help you with. So if you're a power lifter and you're trying to make weight, or if you're just a guy who wants to get stronger and want to cut at the same time, Halo could be something to try. Although the side effects are really, really intense for some of the results with some people. Go ahead, Monster. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Steve, of competing bodybuilders again, and something that we refer to an article when we do these shows, so we have a point of reference. Um, and the comment that's made in the article is thus: this is good about competition diets and competition training, and I've been there in terms of my strength stuff, and I can tell you just from my own experience, it's fucking brutal, absolutely brutal. I deliberately overtrained. If I didn't feel like a beaten up old man towards the end of a training cycle, I wasn't training my ass off. And I needed to have in my mind, Steve, that I was training harder than the next motherfucker. So rest and recover, come back, feel fresh, and then on the day, strong as fuck. Now, from a competition bodybuilding perspective, in terms of dieting and training, there's an element there, Steve, especially when it comes with a combination. I wasn't dieting. I didn't have to make weight. I didn't have to work my way, as Steve refers to and suggests us now, a category, 105, 110 kilos. I'm a super heavy, so I don't need to make weight. In fact, the only reason for me doing so is if someone else is a similar body weight and I lift 1 pound more, or I'm slightly less than them and I lift the same, then I have an advantage. But for the most part, I'm too goddamn heavy. So let's be true, right? Anybody that's ever competed at the highest level of bodybuilding, amateur or professional, will tell you that when you're on sub 1,000 calories a day and you're training your ass off and you're so lean that you are feeling how cold it is, even if it's a nice day, and you're having to stay wrapped up and you're having to do all the rest and recovery possible, it's brutal. And where Halo shines in this particular regards, as part of an overall stack, it's never going to be a foundational steroid, is, as I said to with the medical aspect, holding on to that hard earned muscle tissue that you want to keep while you strip away the body fat. And here's the thing again, right? Dorian Yates and others have talked about this. The truly cut, truly lean, you see this person, I'm thinking Ronnie Coleman and Dorian at certain times in their Olympia careers, perhaps more than others in recent years, Steve. Um, where Dorian describes the skin on his feet being so thin that it was uncomfortable to walk around on. When Ronnie transformed from the 250 to 280 to 298 pounds and looked like he'd come from another planet, that level is not a nice place to be physically. You're taking PEDs, you are dieted the fuck, you are lifting, in the case of Ronnie Coleman, 800 pounds deadlifts and 800 pounds squats and 550, 600 pound benches, and you're tearing shit up like Dorian was, and you're cold, and your feet are fucking so lacking in fat, it's uncomfortable to walk around in. It is not a nice place to be. So in this particular case, Halo's role is for you to keep the muscle tissue that wants to fall away. You're training to the nth degree, trying to strip away the last nuance, bring out the marbling and granite-like effect on your muscles that makes you look like some sort of lab-created monster. That is not a healthy, comfortable place. And Halo, because of the medical aspect, is going, whatever you do, motherfucker, we're going to keep as much muscle tissue on the bone as we possibly. You're not going to like it. You're not going to feel like it's nice, but you will look in the mirror and fingers crossed on stage like something else at the top level. Now, as per the article and as per these shows, the reality of the situation is, Steve, that for the majority of listeners, and I'm going to include myself and you for that matter, Steve, we're never going to get to that particular place. But what we can do is take certain aspects from those athletes who have been there and learn them and apply them. Let's talk about, and I'll throw this back on your side, Steve, the cycling and the dosing side.
Okay, so there's certain anabolic steroids out there that I recommend you use by itself, especially if it's your first time using it. And Halo is definitely one of them. There's really no reason to stack anything with Halo. Maybe a TRT dosage of testosterone. So in that situation, if you were on TRT, that's fine. You can you can use some Halo with TRT. Okay. But anything more, I don't agree with it. And you're just basically going to make things hard on yourself. So with Halo, using it by itself, the average dose is 20 milligrams. This is the average male dose for PED purposes. Some guys will go 30, some guys will go 40. But you get the laws of diminishing returns go rapidly, because if you run more than 40 milligrams of this stuff, the side effects and the effects of turning your blood into motor oil has a negative consequence when it comes to this stuff. So really, it's not designed. So I would start with 10 milligrams, Mobster, maybe 15 milligrams of Halo. That's all you
Yeah,
need.
yeah,
And go for 4 weeks and see what kind of effects you get. Optimally on that, the effects that you get is you're going to get an increase in strength. You're going to get some fat loss, assuming you're not eating trash, and you're going to get good lean muscle mass from that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's pretty much the effects you're going to get. So it's a really good one. If you got a competition coming up, you're looking to get a little stronger, you're looking to do this or do that. I drink a ton of water on it as well. I would double
yes.
my water intake on this stuff as well. Very, very important. And then one more note before you bring you in, Mobster, for your opinion. But I would make sure when you're using your liver support, it's very, very important with these types of steroids that you dose your liver either 2 or 3 hours before or 2, 3 hours after. So it doesn't interfere with the steroid itself. Go ahead, Mobster.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts here, Stephen. You've just touched on one. If I was using this, typically when we talk about a liver support and one particular product that we refer to in other shows, listeners, I would up their dosage a little bit. So, for example, the particular product in question would be 7 capsules a day. I would take this to 9. If I was running this specifically for strength/powerlifting competition, I would run it towards the higher dosages, as Steve's talked about. So perhaps 30, 40, maybe even 50 milligrams, but I would keep the cycle short. There are 2 or 3 steroids, and again, check drops and Halotestin are right out there, that when you run them at the kind of crazy, fucked up, I'm going to kick your ass, break a world record, squat a grand level, pretty much all the articles that I saw back in the day, Steve, had you running these for 2 to 4 weeks. It was not a steroid that I wanted to run aggressively for that length of time that I might, for example, Debo. I've argued, as you know, with other gurus, friends of ours, when they talk about oral steroids, 4 weeks. And I said, no, 6 weeks, 8 weeks is fine. Do that all the time. So many people do. It's the bias that we all have when we talk about these shows that makes us change our mind as we get older and what we want out of the sport. And a particular person in question doesn't need to be a 300-pound strength monster anymore. And there's other options. So they say, listen, we'll do something different. I disagree. However, in the case of Halotestin, I agree a great deal. I would run it for maybe 4 weeks as part of a competition stack as a bodybuilder, maybe 4 weeks if I was a person that competed in a weight class in terms of retaining muscle tissue and making weight, like Steve said. In terms of the aggressive side of things, the toxicity that I almost want, that sense of edginess, Steve, 2 to 4 weeks at a maximum. I'd probably run it for less towards the end of my preparation for a strength competition and bring it in so that on the day I'm in ass kicking mode. Something else I want to touch upon, Steve, and it refers to the whole void rage, steroid aggressive side of things. Listen, if you're low T kind of person and I put you on TRT, you could feel like a new man. But really, what you're really doing is getting back to how you used to be, right? Now, in terms of, and this is something actually referred to in the article, if you are a dickhead and you're not on steroids, and you become more of a dickhead if you're on steroids, there is no actual scientific basis per se that's ever been upheld in the court of law, that to the best of my knowledge, Steve, ever, that's actually found a specific medical condition such as roid rage. Great in the media, but it's never been used as a proper excuse or get out clause, if you like, a defence in court. However, we know full well, because just of our own personal experiences, we do these shows, how certain steroids make us feel. Halotestin, run at the higher dosages for short periods of time, will give the majority of listeners who do it that way a kind of edgy sense of something almost bordering on not feeling quite right / toxic sense. Now, in terms of competition for strength, not for bodybuilding, but to a lesser degree bodybuilding, that ability to kick ass in the gym or in terms of strength on the weightlifting platform is what you're looking for. So for me, Steve, and again, I'm a super heavy, so it doesn't really count for me. If I was a 105, 231 pound athlete, and I was a few pounds over, like Steve said, and I needed to make weight, and at the same time to perform at my absolute best as I possibly could within that weight, then Halo for me would be something that I'd run towards a higher dosages, but for short periods of time. Lower dosages, take it out to 4 weeks. This would the same thing applies would be, for example, high dose trend, high dose check drops, for example. I've seen Halo and check drops from gurus when they said 2 weeks, high dosage 2 weeks. Get that edgy, kick-ass feeling, great. Same thing again for the contest prep bodybuilder that wants to maintain a level of muscle tissue, wants to keep up the level of intensity in the gym, stay in that absolutely amazing shape, look ready for the day of the show. But again, because they're running it as part of an overall stack and they're doing other things, and obviously they're dieting their asses off, etc., the lower dosages that Steve talks about, the slightly longer periods of time, again, 4 weeks. I can't see me ever thinking in any sort of perspective that I've had with any experience and any of the stuff that I've looked at in regards to Halo, Steve, for long periods of time. I can't see me, and I'm quite okay with this with other rules, talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 weeks. Forget it. No, there are other options. There are other things I can do. I'm just looking for me, in my particular case here, Steve, a competitive edge on the day of a strength competition, whether it's strongman, powerlifting, weightlifting, Olympic lifting, whatever. Anything that requires peak levels of strength for an 8-hour competition, give me what you got. And Halo, for a lot of readers and athletes, back in the day was the drug. There are other things and there are other stuff to do, but of course we're talking about specifically Halotestin today. Anything else, Steve, before we finish?
Yeah, try it out. Give it a shot. Start with 10 or 15 milligrams a day. See how you like it. Plan to run it 4 or 5 weeks tops. Make sure you're running your liver support and run it solo and see how you react to it. You may love the stuff. You may hate the stuff. It just depends, but experiment with it. I've used it a couple times. Mobster has used it. It's worth
Much,
a
yeah.
shot. It's not
Yeah.
my it's not something I would use again.
No,
And I don't think it's something Mobster would use again. But for
no.
some of you, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love the effects it has on it, especially if you're a competitive powerlifter trying to make weight. I think that would be the best thing. Also, wrestlers. I think if you're a wrestler trying to make weight,
Fighters, Steve. Fighters, even.
yeah,
Boxers and
fighters,
MMA, yeah.
yeah, fighters. It may though kind of hurt you when it comes to endurance. That's the only thing why a fighter might not want to use it. But you could try 5 milligrams a day in that case and see if it helps you more than hurts you. So it's
If
all
you're
about
tested, if you're tested athlete, forget it, guys. It's going to be definitely one that's very easy to test for. Certainly because again there are other options you can do. But yeah, I agree with everything Steve just said. For me, and I'll just use myself as a thing again. I've described, without being too egocentric, Steve, that in certain ways, even now, I'm an elite strength athlete for my age, and I have been to, and I still have world records. So when I'm looking for something that's going to take me to the nth degree, I think I'm kind of there, and I've certainly been there. So if I was on my way up, Steve, if I was still progressing towards a peak level of strength for my age, for my weight, or whatever else, Halo for me would still, I think, have a role to play. And certainly, again, for the majority of listeners who are not breaking world records, who are not out there squatting the ground or whatever, it's definitely got something that you should have a look at and see if it works for you. I think when I came to it, I'd actually kind of passed that point, world record level, peak level of strength in certain particular regards. And so I was looking for some, let's go turbo. I want to go kick ass. I want to go red line. I want to see and I'd already been there, Steve. I'd already done that. So I didn't have that didn't lift me up to a new place, a new level, because I was already at that place. I couldn't get much further than I'd already gone. That's only going to happen on a couple of lifts now. So I was expecting perhaps more than it was going to give me. But for you listeners that are still progressing, that have still got another 10 or 15 years to kick ass in the gym, take names, go out there, get on the platform, get in the ring, get in the dojo, do whatever the fuck it is, and take yourself to county and national and international standard, whether that's bodybuilding, weightlifting, strength, fight sports, whatever. There might be something for you in halotestin. Again, when we talked about this on other shows, especially with the more harsher / more toxic steroids, low dose, solo, just to see how you get on. I mean, again, Steve, something like this, if it makes me feel like shit, and I'm so bad that I'm not kicking ass in the gym, and I don't want to know. I forget it. It didn't work for me. But if it makes me go out there and take names and puts me onto the stand with the first, the second, and the third guys, and I'm kicking ass and taking medals, I absolutely want to know. Listen, listeners, as always in this particular regards, we want you to do the absolute goddamn best that you can possibly be. The leanest, the most muscular, the strongest, the person that's out there kicking ass and taking names. We want you to come back and give us feedback and say, the show motivated me, it juiced me up, it made me want to go out there and be my absolute goddamn best. Come on the forums, give us your comments, give us your thoughts. Let us know about your experience with halotestin, good, bad, the ugly. Tell us what you think. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.